In a town called Ashilo, there lived a maiden called Aziza. She lived with her father, stepmother, and half sister Ugegbe. Aziza had lost her mother when she was born, and her father had hurriedly married her second wife so that she would be able to take care of Aziza while he went about his businesses. Her father was a very rich businessman and thus was always very busy. When Aziza's stepmother was newly married, she was very kind and caring to her. But a few years after giving birth to her half sister Ugegbe, she changed and started maltreating her. Aziza was always doing the hard jobs at home, despite the fact that they had house helps, and her father had nothing to say about that. Everyone in the village knew that her father was very wealthy, and so many of the eligible young men came after Aziza. But Aziza was not interested in them, and she focused on the handwork of sewing her father had put her to learn. He had promised to establish her when she was through, but her stepmother was a thorn in her flesh. She got angry and jealous anytime a suitor came for her hand in marriage because her daughter barely got a glance from the young men. A particular young man named Bash was really coming strong and would do anything to have Aziza as his wife. Aziza felt it would be better to marry Bash, despite the fact that she knew that Bash was coming for the money, and have a home for herself with him than staying with a wicked stepmother and horrible half-sister. Aziza's stepmother wanted Bash for her own daughter, Ugegbe. She began to feel that why should the most eligible one go to Aziza? That kind of man should be for you, Ugegbe, and not your sister, she said one day while they were both in the house chatting. Yes, mother, Ugegbe replied. Mother, you can see that no meaningful man has ever come into my life because of Aziza, Ugegbe said. Yes, my dear, her mother replied. We have to do something about it, otherwise you will become an old maid in this house. All right, Mom, Ugegbe said. You do what you think is best for me. I trust you. Aziza's stepmother started to plot and make plans on how to outwit Aziza in the marriage arrangement and let Bash marry Ugegbe instead. One day, the town ceremonial feast arrived. The feast was going on in the town, and doors were open to visitors to cook food, share to others, and welcome people into their homes, as was the custom of the people. In the town, there was a young man called Kyla. Kyla had been out of town for most of his life and had come back home to visit his parents for several reasons. He had become successful in life at a very tender age, and his parents told him to come back home to look for a suitable girl to marry. In fact, in the whole town, Kyla's family was the most wealthy family, and they practice, what is known as the right etiquette in the community. Almost half of the town belonged to them. Kyla, with the help of his parents, had decided to disguise himself as a poor man in order to see if he would be able to find a good girl to marry. He was so rich that he was afraid of marrying the wrong person. He wanted a nice, respectable, and responsible person. So, disguised as he was, he had heard about the girl, Aziza. Good nature and sufferings of the girl, he had heard it all and wanted to meet her in person. But he learned someone was already in the way of getting her hand in marriage. On the festival day, Kyla, dressed shabbily, went out with his friends. They went to Aziza's home. There he found that Aziza was really beautiful, but since he got there, she had been in the kitchen, cooking and sweating it out, while his second daughter was in the sitting room chatting and discussing with men. She was trying to entice the rich and eligible men, bachelors in the room, especially the ones said to be engaged to Aziza. He could also see Aziza's stepmother trying to matchmake her with the very one that was said to be Aziza's betrothed. Aziza's stepmother, upon sighting Kyla, the shabbily dressed Kyla, thought Kyla dressed in wretched but neat attire was the best match for Aziza. She began her scheming. She told Aziza to stop whatever she was doing and join them in the sitting room. He placed her beside Kyla to sit there. While she gave everybody food and drinks, she laced Aziza and Kyla's food and drink with portion. Later that night, she made everyone leave, and while Aziza and Kyla were completely drowsed and drunk out of their minds, she, with the help of Ugegbe, her daughter, took them to her father's bedroom, that is her husband, and left them there, closing the door behind her. She hurriedly left home with her daughter. After some time, when it was time for her husband, their father, to return home, she came back with Ugegbe and Bash to the house. There they found their father at the door. Then they entered. The three of them entered the house. Meanwhile, Kyla and Aziza were on the bed, her father's bed, and unaware of the plot going on in the mind of Aziza's stepmother and daughter, were restlessly laying on the bed. Kyla felt a soft body roll beside him and touched it. He felt his male instinct aroused at the feel and cuddled. He touched, and before he knew it, he was already making love to Aziza. Aziza cried out in pain as she felt him inside her, and he covered her mouth with kisses. Just then, the door sprang open. "What is this?" the muffled cry of Aziza's father sounded. Exclamations of surprise and indignation was coming from the onlookers. "What have you done this time?" her stepmother shouted. "You didn't even have the decency to do it out of this house, but on your father's bed." Aziza, still drowsed, got up naked, and her father turned away his face quickly. "Abomination and a big insult," he exclaimed at the verge of tears. Kyla stood up in shock. On the bed was blood-stained. He had disvirgined Aziza, the innocent girl, in her own parents' home. What had he done now? He asked himself, surprised at it all. How had he gotten to this place, he thought, in the first place? The family walked out, and hurriedly Kyla dressed up. "Dress up," he commanded Aziza. "We have been drugged, I'm sure, and about to be blackmailed. I have to do something about it, quickly." Together, they hurried out of the bedroom and entered the sitting room where the others were. "From now onwards," her father said as soon as they came into the sitting room, "you are no longer my daughter. I disown you, and you will never inherit any property in this family. Everything now belongs to your half-sister Ogegbe, my honorable daughter." Aziza was shocked and astonished at it all. She was ashamed. Bash got up and went to Ogegbe immediately. He heard that Aziza was no longer the heiress to the vast wealth of the family. "You can see how hot I am too. I am no longer interested in marrying Aziza. I will go for Ogegbe instead. I've always liked her anyway," he said. Shocked, Aziza looked on in disbelief. "You too?" she exclaimed. "Yes, I think it's better you marry my honorable daughter, Ogegbe, because we have already accepted you as part of the family," her stepmother said, "and we don't want to lose you. You are a better match for Ogegbe." She then turned to Aziza. "Of all the eligible rich men in this town, is this wretched bastard that you opted for?" she asked Aziza mockingly. "Well, as for you," she stressed, turning to Kyla, "you've got yourself a wife. If you are not yet married, take her and marry her." "Of course, I'll marry her," Kyla said, springing into action and holding Aziza in satisfaction. "Obvious. I'll marry her." "Yes, you'd better do that. Her stepmother said, to avoid any family scandal, we'll just hush things up and let it be. Her father, too shocked for words, looked on while his wicked and overbearing wife arranged everything. Her date was fixed. Both girls would be married on the same day, and that was that. I know you're a very poor man. We don't need your money. Just drop whatever peanuts you have as a dowry and take her to your hut, Aziza's stepmother said to Kyla. The most prominent and wealthy families in the town were invited to the marriage, including Kyla's parents, unknown to them that Kyla was their son. On the marriage day, it was all spectacular as people from all walks of life thronged the venue. The two girls were married off and dowries were paid. As Kyla was about to make a speech and present his dowry, her stepmother quickly stepped in for fear he would disgrace the family with his poverty level and hushed him up. Towards the end of the party, Kyla's father stood up and thanked Aziza's family for allowing his honorable son Kyla to marry the most responsible, respectful, and virtuous girl in the whole town. The surprised father, stepmother, and half-sister, Ugegbe, were shocked to hear that. All the speech, from beginning to the end, was a shock to them. It was too shocking and appalling to them. The Kyla family brought out gifts, too fantastic and expensive for Gagbe and her mother's eyes to see. What have we just used our hands to arrange for Aziza? Aziza's stepmother whispered to her daughter. Kyla walked out and made a speech thanking Aziza's parents for giving him a rare jewel like Aziza. He introduced himself as the honorable and son and heir to the Kyla vast amuse business. It was definitely a historical incident in the town, and people never forgot it as the land that Kyla had disguised himself just to come for a good girl, and they had ended up giving Aziza a good match, a better match than Bash, whom they had arranged for their own daughter. It had all turned well. Bash was rich though. It was through working with the Kailash company, and it was the creator that lifted Aziza despite all odds. That was it. And from that day onward, all the family members respected Aziza. That's the end of the story. Like, subscribe, and share the video. Thanks for watching.